Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon invades Russia. Here we go. As we know, Napoleon was trying to take over the whole world, but he kind of did control almost the whole of Europe. Even had Caribbean territories such as Haiti. Hispaniola itself at once belonged, all of it belonged to France. He was just there was something that has to do with coalition, with them trying to stop France from invading every fucking country and stuff like that. And yeah, let's just learn some more history, man. Like I say, if you love this shit, this channel right here, if you love history, you're gonna love this channel because that's all we're gonna be doing, man. You feel me? Let's get it. Make sure you leave a like in the video. Let's go. It said one must never ask from fortune. English is not my first language, bro. Leave me alone. Then she can grin. Napoleon Bonaparte. Yo, he was a short little motherfucker, man.
Russia,
shout out to Epic
1812.
History.
Napoleon invades his former ally with the largest army Europe has ever seen.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie though. I'm not gonna lie. Europe is full of traitors, bro. Like, seriously. Europe is one continent, although it's not really a continent. Yeah, Europe is not really a continent, motherfucker. Asia should have just been the whole continent, but yeah, they wanted to be different. Like I was saying, Europe is full of traitors, bro. We got Russia with Germany backdooring each other. The French invading Russia after they were allies and stuff like that. And it's crazy how much backdooring that these people was doing back in the day.
But for the French emperor,
and currently how the whole Europe is low-key trying to invade Russia because of the Ukrainian war that's supported by the United States. Well, Ukraine is being supported by the United States. Yeah, I'd be trying to find a way to blame the United States for every fucking thing. Yeah.
Blow
I ain't got no shame.
Frustratingly,
I'm mad, man. They're doing my country dirty, so I'm mad.
Beyond reach. Russia's resilience is unlike anything he's ever encountered. And as winter closes in, his army begins the most infamous retreat in history. In 1807, following his defeat of the Russian army at Friedland, Napoleon had travelled to Tilsit to meet the Russian Emperor Alexander. During their celebrated encounter, the two emperors formed a friendship. And
hey, yo, what is this? Bro, what the hell? Hold up.
1807, following his defeat of the Russian army.
1807, once again, I'm always looking to throw my country in there. 1807 and 1804. Hey, they got their independence from them fuck nigga France, right? From France, we got our independence, and we was chilling. We killed every last one of them French niggas that was on the island and tell them niggas goodbye. Napoleon Bonaparte has so much going on around the world where he thought he could really try to fight everywhere, right? Even the rebels and the islands, he thought he could really just take over the whole world, bro. You were powerful though. I'm not gonna lie.
Army at Friedland, Napoleon had travelled to Tilsit to meet the Russian Emperor Alexander. During their celebrated encounter, the two emperors formed a friendship and made an alliance. But it was not to last. Over the next 5 years, relations between France and Russia cooled dramatically.
Yo, hold on, chat. What's the difference between Prussia and Russia? What is the difference between Prussia and Russia? Because I've been confused on that. Prussia and Russia are distinct historical entities. Prussia was a powerful German state, centered in modern Germany, Poland, Russia, Kaliningrad, right? Known for militarism, while Russia is a vast east. Well, yeah, I know that. Okay, due to their names sound similar in English due to linguistic evolution, but their origins are separated. Prussia from okay, cause I was like, so, there were a time I was thinking, was Russia the same shit as Prussia? But no, but I've learned some type of history on Prussia though.
The Russians were irritated by Napoleon's creation of a Duchy of Warsaw in Poland, which they regarded as meddling in their own front yard. They feared it would lead to the return of a fully fledged Polish state, a traditional thorn in Russia's side. Then there was Napoleon's offer to marry Alexander's sister, Grand Duchess Anna Pavlovna, to cement their alliance. But the Romanovs hated the idea, and after a year of Russian prevarication, Napoleon married Marie-Louise, daughter of the Austrian emperor, instead.
Yo, this dude was hoeing around, bruh. It's like, oh, you want me to marry your daughter? Oh, don't worry, I got somebody else.
Napoleon married Marie-Louise, daughter of the Austrian emperor, instead. Later that year, Napoleon broke a guarantee made at Tilsit and annexed the Duchy of Oldenburg, ruled by Alexander's sister's father-in-law. Worst of all was the fallout over the continental system, Napoleon's not very effective economic blockade against Britain, designed to cripple his most steadfast enemy. Alexander had agreed to join the continental system at Tilsit, but it was hugely unpopular in Russia and ruinous to her finances during a period of economic crisis. When Napoleon found out that Russia was flouting the rules of the system and had resumed an illicit trade with Britain, he was furious. With both emperors accusing the other of bad faith, their two countries began preparing for war. Napoleon knew an invasion of Russia was a massive undertaking, especially as he still had an unfinished war in Spain that was tying down more than 200,000 troops. Nevertheless, in 1811 he began to assemble the largest army Europe had ever seen, around 600,000 men, though less than half of them were French. The rest came from allied states across Europe. There was a Polish corps from the Duchy of Warsaw, led by Prince Poniatowski, a corps from each of the German kingdoms of Saxony, Westphalia and Bavaria, from the Kingdom of Italy, as well as Swiss, Dutch, Croat.
World War II was, okay, well, that was in 19... Damn, that was not too far ago, bro. That shit was not that far ago, bro. Hitler was just alive, bro. Hold up. Yo. Yeah. Yo. Hitler was just alive, bro. 1945. That motherfucker was just alive, bro.
Spanish and Portuguese
imagine if Napoleon
scattered throughout
and Hitler
the
was alive at the same time.
There were
that
even contingents from
madness.
Prussia and Austria, France's recent enemies, now uneasy allies. Some of these allied troops, such as the Poles and Germans, were as reliable as their French counterparts. Others were very inexperienced, or, like the Prussians and Austrians, reluctant to be there at all. This gigantic formation was deployed in 3 armies. The main force under Napoleon himself, another led by his stepson Eugene, and a third led by his younger brother Jerome, King of Westphalia. Neither of these two were experienced commanders. Though one would distinguish himself on campaign, the other would not. On their left flank, Marshal MacDonald led 10th Corps with a large Prussian contingent, while the right flank was guarded by General Schwarzenberg's Austrian Corps. Another 100,000 troops were in reserve, including Marshal Victor's 9th Corps. Initially, the Russians only had 220,000 men to face this juggernaut, organized into Barclay de Tolly's First Army, Prince Bagration's Second Army, and General Tomaszow's Third
Bro,
Army.
they only had 220,000 men. Damn. Against, bro, that's like, yo, that's a lot. I ain't gonna lie, bro. Hey, Russia was facing some real niggas right here. A lot of dudes right there, man.
They would be outnumbered 2-1. But in the run-up to war, Russia scored 2 crucial diplomatic triumphs. Sweden had been at war with Russia just 3 years earlier, a conflict which cost her Finland. By a curious turn of events, Sweden was now ruled by Napoleon's ex-marshal Bernadotte. But after Napoleon occupied Swedish Pomerania without warning, a furious Bernadotte promised Russia that Sweden would remain neutral.
Damn.
Meanwhile, a peace treaty with the Ottoman Empire ended Russia's 6-year war against its southern rival. These 2 agreements secured Russia's flanks from any strategic threat and freed up troops to face Napoleon's invasion.
That I think that was the war with Napoleon. That war, cause 18. I think I've learned in the early, or I think the late 1800s. I think that war right here, exactly. That's not the late 1800s. That's like the early 1800s exactly. They were actually fighting for somebody who was to gain the head to be the protector of Christianism. At the same time, that was one of the things that, because the French also wanted that title, but Russia, I believe, who was it, Peter? Well, I guess it was Alexander who was in power during that time. Then, no, he was not Peter or Alexander. It was somebody else in power, but they wanted to be the protector of Christianism.
On the 24th of June 1812, French troops began crossing the Niemen River into Russian territory. The army was so large, the crossing took 5 days.
Oh my God.
Napoleon's plan was to attack north of the impassable Pripyat marshes and defeat Barclay's army, while Jerome pinned Bagration in place. French forces would then swing south to trap Bagration. Napoleon expected the campaign to be over in 5 weeks. But the sheer size of the French army convinced the cautious Barclay that retreat was his only option. Prince Bagration, a much more aggressive commander by instinct, and often Barclay's fierce critic, was forced to agree. As they withdrew, they burned villages and crops, part of a scorched earth strategy to deny supplies to the enemy. In 4 days, Napoleon had reached Vilnius, but Barclay was gone. To the south, Jerome failed to pin down Bagration. So when Davout's First Corps swung southeast to trap him, he'd already withdrawn to safety. Napoleon's younger brother was out of his depth. Stung by the Emperor's criticism, humiliated when his troops were put under Marshal Davout's command, he resigned his post and returned to Westphalia. The campaign was already beginning to expose serious flaws in Napoleon's plan. Knowing his troops would struggle to live off the land in this impoverished region, he'd organized huge supply depots and transport units to feed the army. But wagons rolled slowly along Russia's bad roads, which were turned to rivers of mud by summer thunderstorms. The army had to make frequent stops to allow its supplies.
I always say this, bro. One of Russia's main power is the fact that it's the winter, bro, and that's one of the things I'm assuming. Not assuming. I think I've did some history research before where I've seen that Napoleon also got caught, just like Hitler. Napoleon also got caught in the winter times too, which end up being the defeat of this war.
Catch up. Bad news for Napoleon's plan to catch the Russians, but a much-needed relief for the many thousands of young conscripts in his army, not used to hard marches day after day. Many were soon dropping out with exhaustion. Others deserted. There were also huge problems of command and control over a vast multinational army that was 3 times bigger than any Napoleon had commanded before. La Grande Armée, once famed for its speed of maneuver, had become a lumbering beast. After a pause to rest and regroup at Vilnius, Napoleon resumed his advance. Barclay continued his retreat to Vitebsk, where he hoped Bagration's Second Army would be able to join him. But Davout blocked Bagration's path at Sultanovka, forcing him to make for Smolensk instead. At Vitebsk, Napoleon clashed with Barclay's rearguard, but once more the Russians escaped, after setting fire to all the stores they couldn't take with them. Meanwhile, 300 miles away, on Napoleon's southern flank, Russian Third Army attacked and defeated the Saxon 7th Corps, forcing Napoleon to divert Schwarzenberg's Austrian Corps to their aid. Russian Third Army attacked and defeated the Saxon 7th Corps, forcing Napoleon to divert Schwarzenberg's Austrian Corps to their aid. By the end of July, Napoleon had advanced 250 miles into Russia, much further than he'd planned. And the long marches in extreme summer heat continued to take a heavy toll on his men. Without fighting a major battle, the army had already suffered 20% casualties, from exhaustion and illness, particularly typhus and dysentery. The army had entered Russia with 250,000 horses, but they were now dying at a rate of 1,000 every day, from exhaustion and lack of fodder. It wasn't just cavalry horses that were dying, but the very horses that were supposed to haul the army's transport wagons.
Damn.
Making a bad situation worse. This crisis in horsepower came just as the French light cavalry, Napoleon's eyes and ears, met their match in Russia's Cossacks.
Here we go.
Cossacks, self-reliant, proud, ruthless, and superb horsemen, didn't play by the same rules as other European cavalry.
Cossacks. Yo, I ain't gonna lie, that name sound cold as hell. Russian, oh my god, I might just use that. That name sound nice as hell though. I'm not gonna lie. Russian Cossacks.
The same rules as other European cavalry. Every day they shadowed Napoleon's army, swooping in whenever they saw an easy target, but melting away into the forests if they were attacked by a stronger force.
Oh, them boys was not playing fair, bro. They was not playing fair, bro.
As well as Russian partisans, made hit-and-run attacks on French supply lines and depots, forcing Napoleon to divert thousands of troops to their defense.
Ooh, that was so smart. Yo, that was such a nice strategy to use against them, bro. Yo, these niggas were hit and run, bro. They hit you and they gone. Yo, nah, them boys was nasty with
Russian
that.
regular light cavalry,
oh my God.
They also prevented French patrols from carrying out reconnaissance, which meant that Napoleon often lacked good information about roads or the enemy's whereabouts.
They did what?
Information from carrying out reconnaissance, which meant that Napoleon often lacked good information about roads or the enemy's whereabouts. Napoleon stayed 16 days at Vitebsk, resting his troops and considering his options. Among his many mounting concerns was the security of his long, exposed flanks. But at Vitebsk, he received news that Schwarzenberg had defeated the Russians at Gorodezhna. A week later at Polotsk, a French Bavarian force fought Wittgenstein's Russian First Corps to a standstill. Napoleon's flanks were secure, for now. Although his main force had been reduced to less than half its original strength, Napoleon decided to push on to Smolensk and try to force the Russians into a decisive battle for the city. Barclay was indeed under pressure to give battle from fellow commander Prince Bagration and Emperor Alexander in St. Petersburg. The army's morale and Russia's honor required it, they told him.
What?
In St. Petersburg. Barclay was indeed under pressure to give battle from fellow commander Prince Bagration and Emperor Alexander in St. Petersburg. The army's morale and Russia's honor required it, they told him. With the First and Second Russian armies finally linking up near Smolensk, Barclay decided to attack Napoleon's army, which he believed was concentrated around Rudnya. The offensive was led by General Platov's Cossacks, who surprised a French cavalry division at Inkovo. But alarmed by false reports that Eugene's 4th Corps was outflanking him to the north, Barclay called off the attack. Napoleon, reassured that Barclay's offensive posed no real threat, began a grand outflanking move to the south to take Smolensk and cut off the Russian retreat. The so-called Smolensk maneuver was Napoleon at his best, using Murat's cavalry to screen his movements and keep Barclay in the dark. The Emperor reached the Dnieper on the evening of the 13th of August.
Hold on, Napoleon.
Using
Murat. And that's why this man Napoleon was so great at what he do, bro. It's the fact that that man had a strategist, bro. Strategically, he was one of the great. He was one of the masters, and that's why he was able to take over almost the whole Europe, bro. Strategy-wise, compare him and Hitler. His strategies was way more better. There were more thoughts put into him. Yo, that you see that what he just did, bro? Nah, this right here is cold. Full-on scale war. With this much land and all this thinking, yo,
General
I ain't gonna lie, bro.
Cossacks,
them boys got it back then.
Who surprised a French cavalry division at Inkovo. But alarmed by false reports that Eugene's 4th Corps was outflanking him to the north, Barclay called off the attack. Napoleon, reassured that Barclay's offensive posed no real threat, began a grand outflanking move to the south to take Smolensk and cut off the Russian retreat. The so-called Smolensk maneuver was Napoleon at his best, using Murat's cavalry to screen his movements and keep Barclay in the dark. The Emperor reached the Dnieper on the evening of the 13th of August. His engineers quickly threw up 4 pontoon bridges, and by dawn the next day, his army was
But it's getting to the December, though. Don't worry about it.
Led a second column across the river at Orsha. But a single Russian division, the 27th, fought a heroic fighting retreat from Krasny, delaying the French advance and buying time for Bagration to reinforce the Smolensk garrison. The chance for a surprise assault on the city was lost. And as the Russian army began to pull back, Napoleon displayed an uncharacteristic lack of urgency, even halting the army for a parade to mark his 43rd birthday. When the main attack on Smolensk began 2 days later, Napoleon opted for a frontal assault. 150 French guns battered the city as 3 French corps attacked its medieval fortifications. The Russians resisted bravely, but Barclay, fearing encirclement, ordered another retreat. With Smolensk in flames, the Russians began to pull out. Just as the French fought their way into the city, to scenes of utter devastation. Bagration's Second Army withdrew first. As Barclay's army followed, its rear guard was caught by Ney's 3rd Corps at Valutino. General Junot, commanding the Westphalian 8th Corps, had orders to cut off Barclay's retreat. But having crossed the river, he did nothing, and the opportunity was lost.
Damn, he messed
up. A furious
right there.
Napoleon swore that
Junot, because if he actually went through with that plan, he would have blocked off Barclay's he would have definitely stopped Barclay from retreating, right? Retreating, and he would have been gone. That would have been it. Now he would have just had. They would have actually probably won the war around November if this move right here went through. They would have absolutely won the war in about August because Bagration would have been by himself.
Would never now win his marshal's baton. The Battle of Smolensk cost both sides around 10,000 casualties and destroyed one of Russia's most historic and holy cities, but settled nothing.
Damn.
After the missed chance to defeat the Russians at Smolensk, Napoleon paused once more to consider his options. His men were weary and far from home, and it was already late in the campaigning season. He considered sitting out the Russian winter at Smolensk and resuming the campaign in 1813. But now he was just 230 miles from Moscow. A century earlier, Peter the Great had moved Russia's capital to St. Petersburg, but Moscow remained its historic and spiritual heart, a prize for which the Russians had to fight. Napoleon, always a gambler, decided to push on. The Russians faced their own dilemma. Emperor Alexander had experienced a kind of religious epiphany that summer and rallied the Russian people to the country's defense, describing the war with Napoleon as a war to save Holy Mother Russia from the Antichrist. For months, the emperor had received conflicting advice to stand and fight or retreat. Now he decided change was needed. The cautious General Barclay kept his job, but the emperor summoned General Mikhail Kutuzov to take overall command of Russia's armies. Kutuzov had been beaten by Napoleon at Austerlitz 7 years before, but he'd since won several victories against the Ottoman Empire and was a true Russian, loved by the troops. Although Kutuzov agreed with Barclay's strategy of delay, he saw that constant retreats were destroying the soldiers' and the nation's morale. If Moscow was given up without a battle, the fallout could be disastrous. And so, 70 miles west of the city,
hey, I ain't gonna lie, them boys was low-key pussy though, you feel me? They just keep retreating and retreating and retreating, bruh. You feel me? They just kept retreating. They would fight, but they kept retreating.
Of Borodino, the Russian army prepared to make a stand. Europe was about to witness the bloodiest day's fighting of the Napoleonic Wars. Thank you to all our Patreon supporters for making...
Thank you for making this video, but I think that wasn't... Oh, okay, so we're gonna watch that one too. Probably not today though. But yeah, Napoleon, man, this man was just kind of low-key everywhere, bro. Invading everybody. But he met his match. What was his name? What was this guy name right here? We need to know his name. Kutuzov. He met his match with Kutuzov, even though he had already defeated him 7 years earlier. That's what they said. He met his match. You feel me? I think the strategy that Barclay and Bargiton was using, which was too much retreating, right? Too much retreating, which ended with nothing but soldiers dying and stuff like that. And they allowed Napoleon to kind of move on to Moscow. But anyway, that's something I did not know, bro. You feel me? I did not know all this shit happened, though. But hey, to more history, man.